All right, we are back with another edition. A little bit different than your usual breakdown. We are in the off season. We're looking for material to talk about. Um, I think it probably this head or the YouTube title is going to be you will think is clickbaity, but I do think it is true. College football is in a um, bad situation. Um, I don't know if I would be saying, well, I think I would if we're being transparent. I think I would say the same if Georgia won the national championship this year. I don't think I would feel the effects as much, right?
Right.
But I think I've been pretty consistent on this throughout. I think even when Georgia won the national championship in 2022, um, I was beginning to feel that, especially with the announcement of the 12-team playoff. So, why don't we start with what your biggest complaint, and then we'll work our way backwards.
Yeah, so that's interesting. It's always easy to say that since we didn't play in the national championship. In other words, we would have the same opinion whether Georgia won or not. Here's what I think. I think ultimately this year, Ohio State probably was the best team in college football. Certainly,
Maybe.
after they got beat by Michigan, I think that was a wake-up call to them. And they're certainly, on paper, were one of the more talented rosters, and it proved out on the field. So, with all that being said, as a disclaimer, I think anybody objectively, whether you're talking to Nick Saban, who's come out on a recent podcast that I think you're going to talk about.
Yeah.
I went to hear a former Georgia player speak, and it wasn't just on the topic of football, but it was a wide-ranging speech that he gave, and he played in the early 2000s. And even he said the same thing that I'm about to say, which is – this NIL, there's a couple of things. Guys like me who have a busy life and college football during the season, especially, it is extremely important to me. But one of the things that historically I was able to do is see us recruit a kid, know the high school that he play at, watch the the state high school playoffs if it was a Georgia-based signee or recruit. And then you watch and listen to and his development over the course of 1 or 2 years. And then when he actually starts, you feel like you have a connection to that player. And that's part of why college football is I think, number one, a regional sport, but number two, why the fans are so passionate. You're stripping that away because my quarterback this year is going to be playing for Miami next year. He's going to take his $10 million or whatever it is and his Lamborghini and go play there. And it's not just Carson Beck. These are 1-year free agents that we're getting that have no loyalty whatsoever to the school. When shit gets really hard, and it's inevitably going to do as it's going to do during the season, is this person really there for the right reason? Georgia talks about, what is their why? Why do you work this hard? Why do you want to do this? Well, if they're not bought into the program, and how could they be if they've just gotten there? There's a diminishing of the allegiance that the fans feel, number one. Number two, the coaches are constantly having to recruit. They're not only go out and recruit new players, they're having to recruit their own roster, keep an eye on transfer portal, making sure they got enough NIL money to sign the people they're wanting to get in the transfer portal. And then I have no problem with kids, and I say kids, they're 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old people, young men, getting paid. I think they should get paid. Got no problem if the university is making money off their jersey, NCAA, all that. I get that. But these kids giving them millions of dollars at that young of an age, and the more you transfer, the less your credits are going to transfer from one school to the next. So you're stripping them of the education. You're stripping them of any kind of connection to any of their fellow players. And that's a big part of playing sports because very few of them are going to go pro. And you're giving them tons of money that historically 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids don't make really good decisions with that much money. So all those things together, to me spells a problem. And now that's one part of it. Then we're going to talk about the 12-team college playoff. Okay, well, there needs to be a definition of the 12 most deserving are the 12 best teams, because I don't believe it was the 12 best teams in the top 12. So therefore the rankings or whatever the committee is doing to me means absolutely nothing, because any type of championship, forget deserving. At the end of the year, it should be the 12 best teams seeing who is the best based on merit, not based on subjectivity of the most deserving. So we need to have that discussion. Then if we're going to keep with the 12 teams, which whatever, seems like we're at least stuck with it for a while, you're going to, as a fan, as fans, we might as well go ahead and accept that these first round playoff games they're a joke. There's a bunch of them are going to be absolutely no contest,
unless things change,
which is going to be my other point. The seeding that the 12-team playoff, the college committee did, was so incredibly flawed that it led to flawed games leading up to the national championship. I think ultimately the best team, give credit to Ohio State. Good for them. Ryan Day finally won one. So maybe he can go buy some stuff to dye his beard with more. So good. That's fine. We ultimately got to the right. But is that really the purpose of what we're going to do here? And giving kids this money, making them not stick with any kind of commitment, not getting an education, not having any connection to their fellow players or to the university they're playing for, burning out the coaches because they're constantly recruiting the college base. And then ultimately it's going to lead to more of the shit that we saw this time around, which you were telling me these were the lowest ratings for watching the national championship that's been in a long, long while. So I would like to say that I see it improving, but there's no governing body that anybody listens to. It is the Wild West. And, I can't blame a coach like Kirby and other coaches for saying, the hell with this. I mean, Kirby's whole mantra, the Georgia way, come in, grind, learn what it's like to be a champion, surround yourself with really good athletes and work your ass off. You're going to get playing time. You're going to get developed, and you're going to be able to play in the NFL or be able to go out in the private sector and have a successful career. That message of what Kirby is preaching is so incredibly watered down by all this that one has to think, at what point does Kirby look at that and say, I'm selling bullshit that I don't even believe in myself anymore? And I'm not at all presupposing where Kirby Smart is. Any logical person in Kirby's shoes, yeah, the other part of it is I'm making a shit pot of money. Okay, that's fine. But once you've made a shit pot of money, you don't need to make a shit pot of money as long as the quality of life's good. And I can't imagine the quality of life being good for these coaches right now. So to me, there is a lot of work to do to improve the state of college football. And even though ESPN and all these other people and the sponsors and all that, right now, they're not saying anything. But eventually, if this is not corrected, 5 years from now, we're going to walk into a place and it's going to be really hard to bring back college football if we don't start getting this under control. So I don't know the answers. I'm not getting paid to come up with the answers. I can certainly, as I just did, sit here and tell you the litany of problems with the college football, state of the college football program. So with that, I'll quit being on my soapbox.
Yeah, well, I only asked you one issue. You tackled like 20 of them. But
well,
so
give me an inch, I'm going to take a mile.
So here to me, Saban. Let's talk about the Saban thing first. What you mentioned at the beginning. So Saban mentioned that he gets calls from NFL GMs, coaches, personnel people in the NFL, former players, who say, "Hey, these new guys that are coming in through the NFL, that since the transfer portal has opened up, which was 21, 22, they're not like good enough to face adversity, and a lot of them are not going to pan out because of that. Because here's the thing: most of the time, whenever you committed to a school, if you were good enough, maybe 1-2 years, if you went to Alabama or Georgia, you would have to sit behind guys who were going to go to the NFL. And maybe you would only play maybe 2 years, maybe a year at the most. But you would have to work through it. And you had to prove every single day that you're good enough to get on the field, and then you're good enough to play and have more snaps than the guy behind you or in front of you. So those guys get a taste of adversity early on. Now they don't, because what holds them there? Oh, you're not going to play me? You're not going to give me the money that I want? Well, fuck you. I'm going to leave. I'm going elsewhere where they'll pay me more, or I'll get playing time.
All the power rests with an athlete right now.
Right. Which, hey, look, that's a good thing. Like, sometimes players having the power and choosing their own career, that's a good thing. But it comes with a balance. And you don't want to become like the NBA, where all the players have all the bargaining chips. And then you also don't want to be like Major League Baseball, where the owners own all the bargaining chips and the players have nothing. You have to find a happy medium, the NFL. So I don't know how you get there, but that's a huge problem. What?
I'm going to tell you what my suggestion is when you're recruited and you sign the letter of commitment to come to the university and the paperwork's done and the money's all done, to me, you need to be on a 2-year contract. You've got to stay at the university for 2 years. A. B, you can transfer after your second year, but you can only transfer once until you graduate, and then you can become a graduate transfer. So you get 2 transfers during your career. The first 2 years, you got to stay at one spot, and then you got to graduate in order to get the privilege to transfer and be a graduate transfer. That would solve all this stuff. And then a stipend, and somehow this way over the whatever the minimum wage or whatever is some kind of stipend that goes for offensive linemen as well as wide receivers as well as quarterbacks. Everybody gets paid the same, because eventually, especially with kids, there's going to be animosity behind somebody driving a Lamborghini and playing like shit and throwing interceptions. And if I'm the offensive lineman and I'm working my ass off driving the sled, and then I see that, at some point, human nature, and as narcissistic, you talked about the NBA, as narcissistic as society is and self-involved as society, I could literally foresee a day that all these high school recruits that are blue chip 5-star guys going to these camps and hooking up with one another and getting on social media and saying, we're all going to take our talents to name the school, Texas, Ohio State. And then they get all those people and all those kids, and 2 years or less, they're all gone. But now you're going to start, because they do have all the power and they already see the trend with the NBA players. That stuff is going to happen. It is, without a doubt, it's going to happen.
Yeah, and that's one. But see, then you run into the question of unionization, contracts. I know we're supposed to have a hearing on where, like, ESPN has a deal with the SEC. Each school gets X amount of dollars. How much does the university give to the players? Like, there is a collective bargaining that's going to happen this year. I don't know how that all works, because once you start getting into contracts, that's where it gets really weird. And we're going to have to define what is a student athlete, what is an amateur, because now it's completely changed. I mean, even the Olympics is changed. I mean, they're still not playing people, which is crazy. But like Livy Dunn, the gymnast, she's getting paid more money at LSU than she would be, being an Olympic gymnast. So you're getting into like a weird territory, and we don't have any definition, and we don't have any leadership. Today or this week, the NCAA came out and said, "Oh, if any player can move to any school whenever they want, so you can just up and leave in the middle of the season now," which is crazy.
Well, hey, there was it may be more than one, but one I heard about on the radio, and I don't know what school it was from. It doesn't matter, because it can happen anywhere. The kid, who was a highly sought after recruit wasn't getting playing time.
Oh.
And so whenever they were getting ready for, I think it was getting ready for a bowl game, or I mean, it was like 3 or 4 games into the season, and the kid basically went to the coach and said, "Yeah, I'm not, don't plan on me playing anymore. I'm going to transfer." And so took himself out of even being part of the team in advance of anticipating transferring because he wasn't getting the playing time. Meanwhile, his teammates are practicing their ass off to get ready for a bowl game, and you're going to have more of that. That's not a one-off. That's going to happen.
Look what happened at Oregon where they recruited that quarterback. He signed, was an early enrollee, and as soon as he got there for bowl practice, went into the transfer portal.
Yeah.
I mean, what's going on? So, to me, and Saban, you can go listen to it at the Pivot podcast with Ryan Clark and Fred Taylor, Channing Crowder. They did I think Saban did. That was the most open I have seen Saban talk about college football as a whole, his career. Pretty interesting interview. He sat down with all 3 of those guys. Fred Taylor didn't, but Ryan Clark and Channing Crowder both did play with Saban. So they all knew him, so I think that's why he was open. But he talked about all the problems that are facing college football with the NIL and portal. And I think those are all things that every coach is facing. And, here's the thing. Ohio State had a $20 million roster. I know Oregon and Texas were a little bit more expensive, and Georgia was 4th. But once you take Carson Beck out of it, they're way down there. And NIL money roster-wise. Why? How am I supposed to be impressed with Ryan Day or the University of Ohio State, the Ohio State University, spend $20 million? They just won themselves a national championship. They didn't go out and earn it. And if we didn't have the 12-team playoff, they would have never even been in it.
And I'll tell you something else to kind of go along with that. Anytime Georgia wins the national championship, I'm going to celebrate. But the celebration and again, I just go back to the fan base, the sense of attachment, if you will. Yeah, we rented some players for a year or 2 and paid them, and they won us a national championship. Okay, I don't know. This kid may not like being at the University of Georgia, may not know any of the tradition of the University of Georgia, and next year he's either going to be in the NFL or playing for an ACC school. So to me, it almost can be a bittersweet thing. But yeah, and that's the reason earlier in the year when we were talking about all this and touched on it, that's the reason I said the map of college football is going to all be weighted towards Texas.
Yeah, of course.
It's not going to happen immediately, but it is going to happen. That is where all the money is, the oil money and other types of money. So you got Texas A&M, SMU, TCU. You got all these schools in Texas that if they want to ante up all the donors and buy themselves a team to compete and win possibly a national championship, they're going to be able to do it. And it's only a matter of time before that takes place. And if that's what we're looking for, we might as well call it professional ball and not even make them go to class.
Yeah. So we tackled NIL portal, kind of highlighting some of the problems. To me, the next biggest problem is this playoff format, which is what you talked about. One thing to me is it's way too long. I mean, it's almost a month, and it's weird dates. There's no, and I know it's 1 year, but look, we were told in 2022, really 21 is whenever they started having discussions about this. You remember whenever we were in Indianapolis getting ready to go to the game, they had that meeting. Me and you were talking about it. It was going to happen, it would seem. And the dumbest thing that we ever did was instead of going to 4 to 8 or 4 to 6, we went 4 to 12. I mean, that's a huge jump, huge leap. And kind of held the same principles that we had with the 14 playoff and put it into the 12 team, which is a mistake. But point being, ESPN sold us on, oh, this is going to be a ratings bonanza. The casuals who don't watch regular season college football or watch like one or two games on Saturdays, they're going to be tuning in. And it's going to grow the sport, which, whatever, fine. I think it's really dumb. College football has always been number 2 in the country, whether it's behind Major League Baseball back in the day or now the NFL. It's always been number 2. If you go look at the ratings, even this national championship, though it was low comparative to all the rest of them, it's still going to end up being like the second most watched non-NFL thing on TV. So it's always going to be number 2. Ohio State, just like take this whenever you talk about ratings. Ohio State, Oregon, which was the first national championship in 2014, that was 34.1 million people. Georgia, Alabama, 2022, that was 28.4. I'll pick a random year.
2000. Let's just go 2019.
2019, that was LSU Clemson. That was 25.5 million people. Let's go with another one. Non-COVID. 2016, Alabama Clemson. That was 25.1 million. So usually you're going to be in the ballpark of 23 million to north to 30 million. Now, there have been some outliers. COVID year 2020, Alabama, Ohio State, that was 18.6 million. Whatever, that was COVID, weird numbers. Georgia, TCU, that was 17.2 million. It was 38.7 by the time the entire country got home to be able to turn on the TV. It was a blowout by the time it started.
Which goes back into these ratings and most deserving versus the best teams. But anyway.
Yeah, yes, it does. So whatever. That was, by the way, Georgia TCU, that was the lowest. That was a blowout. The next lowest is a COVID year where things were weird. Ratings were down across the board everywhere. The next lowest is Ohio State, Notre Dame, 22.1 million. Now, 22 million, that's higher than most regular season games. Not by a whole lot, though. Georgia, Texas was the first time that Georgia and Texas played in October. That was 13 million, close to 14 million people.
Oh, you mean when we beat them at home and then beat them again on a neutral field and they still got ranked higher than us? Oh,
yeah, that time.
Oh, okay.
That was nearly 14 million people watched that game. But like, I just don't know how, and I know it's the first year, so things could change, but this is way too long. I didn't give a shit once Georgia got out of the playoff. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't care. And I can only imagine how TCU, Texas, and Penn State fans felt after their teams lost. They're not going to watch. The regions, I mean, think about the region shrink because you went from
offers all Southeastern.
The only thing that was Southern in that national title was the place that the national title was held and the referees in that game. That was it. It was SEC refs and it was in Atlanta. It shrunk and it literally went into like a 100-mile radius between Ohio and Indiana.
Midwest and maybe some of the Northeast, but all the West Coast, all the Southeast, and a lot of the Northeast, they could care less.
They could care less. So this whole thing that we're going to try to grow our game and to give it to the casual and we're going to expand is ridiculous. It's a lie. It's a flat out lie. I've known that for over 2 years. I've said that on here multiple times. And here's the other thing too that I think is one of the bigger problems. The playoff is so long. Like the media and the fans both have agreed the season is way too long. The national championship should be moved way up. Like, this is ridiculous. So college football hears that. The CFP hears the media and the fans all pretty much in a majority. I think it's like an 80-20 thing. All agree, like, hey, this needs to be needs to be moved up in the calendar. They hear that, and then the 2027 national championship, which is going to be held in Las Vegas. Well, guess what? It's Monday on January 25th, 2028. Well, great job, guys. Way to hear the people bitch.
Well, as long as it's profitable, nothing's going to change till the money changes, and then I'm almost afraid it's going to be hard to pull it back. And I hope I'm wrong, and I hope our Chicken Little take on all this is wrong. I hope we are exactly that, Chicken Little. But I agree with you. It's too long. People don't care after their team gets knocked out. And I'll tell you another thing. Anybody that goes into a football season that thinks legitimately there's 12 teams that could legitimately win a national championship, I get that 4 may have been too restrictive, but I agree with you. 12 is too many. We don't need to be having 12 teams in there that have absolutely no shot, which extends the season because you're playing tiddlywink games during the middle of NFL playoffs.
Right.
So they're in for some trouble, and somebody that's got some sense needs to look at it and come up with something that's better than what we got.
Yeah. So those to me have been the biggest issues with college football: transfer portal, NIL. The calendar is messed up. Is there anything else that you could come to mind that you wanted to?
No, I think we pretty much said our disappointment. Not only, I mean, it's really just disappointment at how college football is transforming and transitioning into where it's at now. And I know we're traditionalists and all that kind of stuff, but that's what college football is built off of, and is tradition. And I just don't think you're getting a better product. So therefore, it needs to be switched, and it's gotten out of control. And you're not teaching these guys the right thing. So no, I don't have anything to say, but it's a hell of a segue to say this. Since this is the game that we're playing, these are the rules of the game. Based on what I've seen thus far at Georgia and what we've done in the transfer portal, I think there's still work to be done, because I'm looking at this team right now, and a lot can change, and I haven't looked at it in depth, but I'm looking at it and saying, really, this team's going to win a national championship? If you look at Georgia last year, we didn't have really any difference makers at any of position groups. Now, we were good at all of them. It was supposed to be the quarterback being the difference maker, but we saw that that's not the case, or wasn't the case. So I still look at this team, Malachi Starks. I mean, I would say, and he's going to do well. He's a great football player and a great dog, and I wish him the best. But he wasn't a difference maker. You know what I mean? We didn't have a running back. We didn't have a difference maker. Offensive line, I mean, that's a unit, but there wasn't any different. And we certainly, sure as hell, didn't have it at wide receiver. Maybe our linebackers and pass rushers, maybe in some games they were difference makers. But by and large, Georgia has to have a talent upgrade, and evidently we're going to have to pay for it to get it in-house.
I mean, I think Zachariah Branch can be a difference maker. Noah Thomas can be a difference maker. Nate Frazier maybe can be a difference maker. Defensively, you hope KJ Bolden can be that guy. Chris Cole, Justin Williams, CJ Allen, Raylan Wilson, those guys. Here's the thing. Ohio State, I think, is going to regress a little bit. If we're going with who's going to be the favorite going into the season, Georgia's going to be in contention. They're number 2 right now, odds-on favorite. But to me, I think Georgia can win a national championship with this team. They retained that 2024 recruiting class, number 1 in the country, not a single guy left in the transfer portal. So, yeah, obviously that can change. So, they have the talent, and that's not a question. So, they're going to be in contention. Texas is going to be the odds-on favorite toward once we get into August. Arch, they got wide receivers. They have enough on defense to get them by. That's who's probably, if I had to pick right now, that's who I would pick. But all these other teams like Notre Dame, they're going to regress. Ohio State, they're going to regress. There's going to be a little bit of it's still going to be kind of like this year where it's kind of muddled up top because not every team's going to be extremely dominant.
Yeah, I mean, that's was way in the future, and I know I'm the one that brought this topic up, but my only point is it seems to me more so than recruiting, unfortunately, where we are in college football, we have got to be heavy in the transfer portal, and we've got to spend the money. If Ohio State and the Texas and all these other schools are spending 20 million, then we're going to have to spend 20
Well,
million.
okay, this actually ends up being a pretty good question then. Would you rather have Kirby Smart's philosophy and we're going to recruit, we're going to build through recruiting, and then the holes that we have, we're going to go out into the transfer portal and we're going to pay, which would be wide receivers, a D lineman, maybe a safety, which is what Georgia has done? Or would you rather have like a Ohio State where they go and get big time players through the transfer portal, or an Ole Miss who build like that? Because you're going to have times where you're really good, and then you're going to have times where you're average to below average.
Well, obviously, I would rather have the former, meaning we recruit and we develop and we supplement through the transfer portal. But based on last 2 years, Max, and I know it's 2 years, so but
Yeah.
that's not been enough. So what that tells me, or not doesn't tell me, what I'm asking is Kirby's way in the modern football era still going to work? I don't know, because how
I don't
many
know
of
either.
those kids that you recruited and worked your ass off to get in house and putting through the grind are going to be willing to stay 2 years? In this era, based on what I've seen, very, very few. And I know you said all the 2024 class is still there, but
Yeah.
they also hadn't gone through spring practice and seen the depth chart. So there's going to be another exodus. Go ahead and anticipate it
Yeah.
after spring practice. So you might as
Sure.
well go ahead and get used to it.
I much rather win with guys who are developed, who are promised, hey, this is the way you can get to the NFL,
Me
grind.
too.
And if we don't win a national championship, so be it. I rather not. Right now, I know I sound like one of those idiot fans who are like, I rather win with dignity. But
Not me. I'd rather win, baby. If the rules are the game of this, let's get really fucking good at it until it changes.
I rather go 10-2 and take a shot at the playoffs and see what happens. But who knows? All right, couple of housekeeping things before we end this. First, Georgia basketball, terrible loss on the road to Arkansas. Up 15 in the second half. Should have won that game. Had multiple opportunities to win. Bad. I don't know. Now, we were talking about, this team can make the tournament. Now they have to win against Florida, which they've never been able to beat Florida.
This seems to be a common theme with this. I mean, again, I don't know.
With Mike White.
Well, crumble in the second half. They can be up and playing a really good game, and then something just happens to where they get steamrolled in the second half.
Yeah, not great. We'll see, obviously, but either you're gonna have to make a long SEC tourney run, or you're gonna have to beat Florida at home, and it sounds a lot easier to beat Florida at home. But we'll see. That is Saturday. Next thing, minor thing. If you're really in tune with Georgia football, Ron Corson. Basically he retired, though he's resigning from his position and taking an administrative role. He's retiring. Now he's transitioning to a administrative supportive role. And so Connor Norman is going to take over, who's a team captain in 2013. And then Ryan Maldini, I don't even know how to say his name, but he's the head athletic trainer. So good for them. Ron Corson.
Been around for a long time.
Long time. We stole him from Alabama. And he changed, led a lot in sports medicine. So good for him. Great career. He'll be retired. He'll be put in the Circle of Honor at the Busmere building. So congratulations to him. Anything else before we go?
No, that's it. We'll continue with updates and things of that nature. And I know you're going to say it, but subscribe. It would really mean a lot to us. We're trying to grow the subscriptions. Like, comment, tell us why you think we're right or wrong. That would be important.
Yeah. Yeah, like and subscribe. Follow us on all social media platforms at Terminus Sports _ ATL. Comment, leave us a review. We'll soon, probably in the next month or so, going to start talking about Braves baseball again. So we'll have something. Hopefully, they do something this year because about midseason it got really repetitive because they started sucking. So hopefully that changes, but we'll keep posting on Georgia football stuff, college football things, and then obviously Braves baseball. So check us out there. Our presenting sponsors, Unishippers, give us a pitch.
We work with small to medium-sized companies, helping them reduce their shipping costs, anything from envelopes all the way up to pallets and full truckloads. So if you think your shipping's gotten out of alignment during Q4, feel free to reach out to and ask for Holland Martin at Unishippers Atlanta, and we'll give you a no obligation quote and see if we can help you reduce that line item.
All right, that'll be it for us. We'll see you on the other side.
All right, see ya.